Hello again. In this podcast, what I thought I'd do is share a story. So if you've been listening to the series, I've covered quite a lot of ground in different things that I've done over the years. And the last couple have really focused much more on some of the technical side of photography. Really the last four, looking at that. So I wanted to get back to storytelling really, and I thought I'd share an experience with you that I had when I was volunteering in Zimbabwe near Victoria Falls, and that was an amazing project, the Nakavango Conservation Program. Unfortunately, a couple of the people who were running the program when I was there are no longer there because of COVID. And to me, that's a real shame. In fact, I'm not sure, there might be more who are not there anymore. But nonetheless, it was an amazing place to go visit. I learned a huge amount about conservation. And I think I've shared that in an earlier podcast where I spoke about the Nakavango Conservation Program. I might put that one back up again soon because I don't think it's available as I record this. And I just wanted to share what happened when things went slightly wrong for us. So I was in a four-wheel drive with a few other people, and we'd headed off. And basically, the reserve that we were in, it's a private game reserve. And because of some of the animals they have there, there's a fence around the reserve, and that's electrified to stop poachers, because poachers are a major problem. And in fact, there's even an anti-poacher squad there based at the reserve, and great guys, actually, very, very nice guys, but they put their lives on the line every time they go out. And so it's a very serious concern. These guys even have their own little area well away from where the tourists go, where they have a little gym and things like that they can use to stay fit. So anyway, on this particular afternoon, we were out. This was the group of us who've been with the program a little bit longer. The people who just joined were actually on a trip down to Victoria Falls to go and have a look at the falls. That's something that was organised by the people running the volunteer program. So we were out, we were looking at wildlife, and the reserve itself is split down the middle by a river, and it's a small river that I believe runs into the Zambezi. So it's a tributary of the Zambezi. And basically, where we were living was on one side, and there were three different bridges, a couple of more regular sort of bridges in terms of being sort of well, they're not really regular bridges, I guess. They're more sort of floating things. So they're semi-submerged at times, but you normally run over the top of them. Well, we had three of those. There were two that we used most often. And we'd been near one of these particular bridges where we decided to go across, because we'd seen a group of giraffe and they were all doing their thing and wandering off, and I got some photographs of them. And then we'd headed back up the track, still remaining on the other side of the river to where we lived, where the lodge was that we were in. Well, it's not a lodge, it's more like servants' quarters, or it was, but it's now used by the volunteer program. So our quarters, if you like, where they were. And we'd found some soldier ants. So that was really interesting, just watching them do their thing. And we sort of stayed with them for a little while. Now, what I had noticed as we'd driven over this particular bridge to go onto the side of the other side of the river, and remember that I'd been over this bridge quite a few times, as we all had, who'd been in the program a few weeks, it just seemed to me that the water level was very low, much lower than normal as we went over the bridge. Anyway, I didn't think any more of it. I was having a great time photographing the animals, having a look at what was around, and then we decided to go back. And that when we got back to our crossing point, it was absolutely flooded. The whole river was in flood. And I'm not talking a little flood here. It was quite high. It was over the level of the bridge. The water was running very fast. There were a lot of bits of trees and things coming down the river. So there'd been a huge amount of force driving the water. And what had happened was that upstream, there were actually a couple of dams. Now, I'd been to one of these dams the previous week, and it was like the water was way away from it. Was just a long way from the top of the dam. We'd even been camping on that side, on the other side of the dam from where I was at that particular point in time. We'd been camping there next to the river, or a little way back. You don't camp next to rivers; it's not a good idea because you tend to get predators and things. But we were a little way back, but basically on the sort of flat ground near the river. Excuse me, and it was great, but that was now completely submerged, and we basically couldn't get across the bridge because the water was far too deep, and the four-wheel drive wouldn't have been able to handle that amount of water. So we quickly shot downstream because there was another bridge further down. Unfortunately, that one was as impassable as the first one, and that was kind of it. So we had to go. We went back up to where the first bridge was and went a little bit further. And there was an area where we'd been removing some of the sort of alien vegetation that they didn't want there. But there was also a little area for the people at this very expensive hotel that was also part of the reserve. And in fact, some of the hotel staff had been setting up this buffet with champagne and all this other stuff in a sort of open building next to the river. And they were kind of watching the river, which was now getting higher and higher. And we kind of parked up down there, and we're looking, and the guys I will say that the guys from the program really looked after us and made sure we were okay, because they were on the radios getting in touch with people to let them know what was going on and to figure out what to do. However, after a while, we were told just be careful about being in the water because of crocodiles coming down river. Now, so this is me talking. My experience with crocodiles is that they're kind of okay, but I mean, you always respect animals. Hippos are much more dangerous, they're much more aggressive. My experience of crocodiles is that they're generally not so aggressive, but like any hunter, they'll go after anything that's an opportunistic kill, so that would potentially put us on the menu. So basically what happened, we were there for quite a while, and I sort of shot a bit of video of what was going on. And there was one area where there was an old gate basically that went out of the reserve, and it was possible to turn off the electricity to that. Excuse me, just having a slurp there. And that was one option for us to get through. And there was another group, another four-wheel drive, a Land Rover came round from the hotel, and they were, getting stuff out. So their car was reasonably full though. So we followed them to this particular gate. The problem was though that when we looked at what was on the other side of the gate, that whole area had been flooded, and even in four-wheel drives, with the weight we had, we really thought that wasn't a good idea to attempt to get the four-wheel drives through there, because it was just too wet, too boggy, and we could have easily got into a bit of trouble. So essentially, it took us, I think it was around another 2 hours. So it was quite a long time. We were sat waiting to get out, and we found another part of the fence where the guys came down and they turned the power off and basically cut the fence to let us out. We followed this other Land Rover basically through the hole in the fence, and then the guys who'd opened the fence were then closing it. Now, so we then followed the Land Rover. That was sort of getting out, and off he went. Then the guy who was looking after us said, has anyone picked up the couple of guys from the hotel who were putting all this gear together? And another car had gone out, but they'd lost us, and they didn't actually know exactly where the hole in the fence was. So basically we had to turn around, go back and sit there with our lights on so that they could see. So by now it's dark. And then they managed to find us, and we all got out. Now the guys who were mending the fence, what we found out later was that as they were putting everything together and then disappearing off, they saw a leopard, which, now I've got to say, I've seen leopards a few times, but they're almost always up in fact, every time I've seen them, I think they have been up in trees. So what you tend to see is a poor or a tail hanging down out of a tree and not much else. Or if you're lucky, you can just get an angle where you can see its face. But I've not seen one, I think, at all when I've been in Africa actually walking about. So that's a photograph I definitely want to get. So on the one hand, it was nice that the leopard was there. On the other hand, it was sort of irritating that I didn't get to see it. But having said that, while we were waiting, it was all pretty dark. So that was essentially the story. We ended up having to drive around to the town of Victoria, or near the town of Victoria Falls, and then come back up to where we were staying. But the purpose of really sharing this is that just to say that sometimes things don't quite go according to plan. And first of all, I would say make sure that whoever you go with when you do these trips, I always recommend going with somebody who knows the area, a local guide, or go with an organisation which is what I was doing with the Nakavango Conservation Programme. Go with a group that know what they're doing. And most of the time, things will go more or less as you expect, but always be prepared for something unusual to happen. And when it does, just don't panic. We were pretty good, actually, except for one guy who kept complaining he was hungry for about 2 hours. But just be aware that things can go wrong. And just enjoy the experience, really. It's all a little bit of an adventure. It's something unusual that can happen from time to time. So that was an experience with the game reserve, but it was quite interesting being cut off from our normal routes back. And in fact, over the following days, the main bridge we used was usable again because it was it actually withstood the damage and you could drive it. But another bridge that we regularly used downriver was partially destroyed. So it was basically formed of a central concrete piece that went across the river with areas for the water to drain through underneath it. But at either end, it was made up of rock, rocks that had just been piled in, but they got washed away. So there was a lot of force in the river when it was in flood. So that's, I guess, another point. If you are on your own, just be very careful of water. Water is very powerful, and again, don't underestimate it. And you really also you really need to have a good idea of how deep the water is before you go in it. Otherwise, you can get yourself into all sorts of trouble, particularly if you don't have a backup vehicle or anything else to anybody else around who can potentially pull you out of trouble. So, that was, I guess, the experience of being trapped in a game reserve. It was interesting. I mean, it was good looking out for crocodiles, looking out for unusual things that I hadn't planned to see while we were there, and then just waiting while the guys worked out how to best get us out of the reserve. But there you go, a small story. I suppose it's a behind the scenes that, as I say, things can occasionally not go as planned. So hopefully that's interesting. It's if you do volunteer or you go on one of these safari programs, as I've said, most of the time they go pretty much as planned, but every now and again you might have something interesting happen. I do remember being in a four-wheel drive in the Ngorongoro crater, I should say, in Tanzania, and the guy driving the four-wheel drive decided to do a three-point turn on the track and got himself stuck. So that was quite interesting, thinking about, because we were there for a little while he figured it out and managed to get the vehicle going again eventually. But I think he'd been trying to show off to the lady in the four-wheel drive, and it didn't end quite as well as he would have hoped. That was quite interesting getting out of that one. We only just got out of the crater before they closed it, because it's actually it's gated. It's closed at night, and they close it around sunset. Having said that, they do count the vehicles in and count them back out again, so they do know if a vehicle is down there that shouldn't be. But even so, we were delayed a while he was getting going, and we were one of the last vehicles out on that particular day. So you never know. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling. As I say, hope you've found them interesting. It's just another little stories from the bush. Enjoy photography. Have a great day. Hopefully you've got some trips planned, or you're inspired maybe to look at volunteering, doing a volunteer program. I do recommend them. Most of the volunteer programs I've done have been very good. And as I say, you can learn a huge amount by going into those programs. So bye for now, and I'll speak to you in the next podcast. Bye now. Oh, and one thing just before you go, please take a look at the 2026 wildlife calendar. That's available now. It's on the website. There's a link below the description of this podcast episode. So please take a look, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.